HOA president vandalized my truck and had it towed away to have a junkyard to dismantle it. They were forced to fully repair it, and I sued the HOA president. Posted by Knock on Wood HOA. This incident happened in January of this year. Last year, I moved into a neighborhood with an optional HOA. At the time, I'd come into enough money to buy a house outright. The only reason I moved here is because the HOA was optional and it's a nice, safe neighborhood. It's a slice of heaven compared to where I used to live. I own 2 vehicles, a 2004 Toyota Camry and a 1999 Ford F-150. The Camry is my daily driver, while the F-150 is my hauler for when I need it. I bought the truck around the same time that I bought the house to help me out with the move, and I used it to pull a rented trailer when I was moving my stuff in. The F-150 is old, but it's in good mechanical order, and I try to keep both of my vehicles clean with monthly trips through a car wash. The local HOA did not like me from the start due to my refusal to join. The HOA president was a retired old man who seemed like he had nothing better to do. So he tried multiple times to sell me on joining and sent me several applications in the mail. But I always declined. Politely at first. But when the president got more aggressive, I told him to shove it where the sun doesn't shine. That's when the HOA decided that I was a member anyway, and then they started sending me fines in the mail with that claim. I knew they were bogus, so I went to the next HOA meeting to dispute the fines. They tried to tell me that by living here, I'm in the HOA whether I liked it or not. This was an obvious power move and something that I was ready for. I could only laugh in amazement of their stupidity, and I said as much to them. Then I told the board that not only was I not a member, but I'd gotten a lawyer to write up a C&D for them. I handed the envelope over. The board skimmed it and then furiously told me to get out. The fine stopped for a few months and then started right back up again at random. So I popped into another HOA meeting and I told them that this was not legal. I'm not in their HOA and I'd take them to court if they didn't stop. Once again, I was furiously told to get out. The fines stopped for good, but the HOA president decided that I needed to be made an example of. It happened only a few days later. I came home to find my F-150 gone from my driveway. I checked the cameras and saw the HOA president himself walk onto my property. He took out a pocket knife and stabbed each of my truck's tires in the sidewalls, then unscrewed the license plates off, put them in a bag, and just casually walked away with them. Then, a little while later, a tow truck came and hauled my truck away. I called the police, and together we went to see the HOA president. But he wasn't home. With my situation explained, this was not considered a civil matter, but grand theft auto. The police traced the tow truck as being from a local junkyard and not from an impound lot. I accompanied the police there, and not only was the HOA president present at the junkyard, but my F-150 was there being taken apart by about 4 men. They'd already removed the headlights, the hood, the bumper, and the radiator, and all of the panels off of the front of the truck by the time we got in there. There was stuff disconnected all over the engine bay, and the catalytic converters had already been cut out. The HOA president looked like a deer in headlights when he saw me there with police. I was nearly angry beyond words when I saw my truck in that condition. Nearly, I say, because I went off like a foul-mouthed country sailor on the people who'd ripped my truck apart. The HOA president was caught red-handed, but he insisted that he'd only towed my truck because it was in a sorry state and looked abandoned. I said he illegally took it off of my private property since the HOA had no right to tow it off of my land, and he clearly had not been aware of my cameras as they'd seen everything that he did. He went pale at first and then furiously tried to stomp towards me looking like he was ready for a fight while yelling that my truck had been an eyesore, so he got rid of it. This action earned him some new bracelets and a free ride to the station. the police were somewhat merciful to the junkyard staff who claimed to have only been doing their jobs. The owner of the junkyard is a cousin to the HOA president, so he was contracted to do any towing for the HOA since he was also owned a local impound. He had no idea I wasn't a member of the HOA and also was not aware that his cousin had ordered his employees to tear my truck apart for parts as an abandoned vehicle. The police cited all sorts of broken laws to the employees and the owner, and then they agreed to put my truck back together. But I said that it had better be at least as good as it was, if not better, or I'd be going to my lawyer. The owner told his employees to do whatever it takes, or he'd separate them from their jobs. Then he told me he'd bill the HOA president for everything later. Then the police and I got to watch as all of those employees had to painstakingly put my truck back together, piece by piece. And they repeatedly muttered things about me to each other and flashed me the stink eye from time to time. Yeah, I'm guessing the HOA president offered to bribe them all to take my truck apart as quickly as possible, but now they had to fix it for free. And they were at it for hours. They had to weld the catalytic converters back in and even had to replace some parts entirely due to damage caused during hasty disassembly. When they first fired up the engine, it had an obvious misfire. Yeah, they denied it, but police sided with me that they could tell that it had a misfire too. Turns out they had ruined one of the coil packs taking the truck apart, and they had to order new parts from a nearby auto parts store to fix it. One of the headlights also stopped working. Again, something that they had to fix because I stated that I could prove with my home cameras that they were both working when I last drove it. And the bulbs were nearly brand new LEDs, so they had to have broken something. The coolant lines had also been just cut instead of simply disconnected, probably because they were trying to take the truck apart in a hurry. So those were more parts that had to be ordered from the nearby store as well. I can only imagine the total cost that was billed to the HOA president for this. All 4 of the tires had to be replaced because they were not repairable. So they had to leave the truck on a lift and take all 4 wheels off. There were other problems too, and all of these junkyard mechanics had to work overtime to put the truck back together on the hopes that I wouldn't sue or press charges. I wasn't even able to take the truck home till the next day evening because the police had to get my plates back and the junkyard staff had to take the wheels in for new tires. By the time I got the truck back, the 2 junkyard employees I saw there gave me looks that just said not to come back. And the truck actually runs better than before. So essentially, I got a free sort of overhaul for my trouble. As for the HOA president, well, I did sue him for trespassing, for theft, destruction of property, and the illegal tow. He ended up paying his cousin for all of my truck repairs, lost his position in the HOA, and moved out of the neighborhood shortly after losing the lawsuit because he had no leg to stand on in court since everything was caught on CCTV. He pretty much surrendered to the asked-for settlement, which is why it didn't get drawn out. The HOA has not bothered me at all since that truck incident, and my neighbors love me for getting rid of the old HOA president, as he was a power-tripping narcissist to them all and kept issuing pointless fines that had to be regularly disputed. Also, I've been back to that junkyard for parts, but for my Camry instead, as I went to pull a replacement grill for it and found one in excellent shape there. They did recognize me, and they gave me some dirty looks, but otherwise, they didn't bother me. Updates and more info from OP. One commenter says, if it was optional, was it a neighborhood association? Most HOA are mandatory as they run with the land, unless they were trying to annex you. Either way, kudos on blowing their HOA. And OP replies, from what I know, the HOA was originally set up as a volunteer association, probably to make it look more appealing. So that system remained for whatever reason, but they slowly got almost everyone else in the neighborhood to join. I'm told the HOA was actually pretty good until the current board took over. However, them booting out the president that I sued effectively neutered them. And I'm betting the board will all get replaced, since the current president that was elected after the last one was kicked out is way nicer. The rest of the board are old fat cats, and several of my neighbors have told me that they want to replace them in the next board election, which is happening soon. Commenter replies, "Why replace when you can dissolve the HOA? Just do it. Plant the idea." OP responds, "Believe me, I've heard that idea may be floating around, but since I'm not in the HOA, I'm not kept in the know about most details. But whatever happens, I'll try to update about it as the board elections are only weeks away." Next commenter says, "The fact that the junkyard owner made the HOA pay for all the repairs is probably the only reason those employees still have jobs. If they ever give you a hard time, maybe bring that up." And OP replies, "Yeah, but I'm betting that junkyard owner isn't really a very good person. Someone told me they heard he used to run a chop shop in the 90s and may still be doing that. I can't confirm or deny that though, which is why I didn't bother to include it. But yeah, it was just grand that the HOA president had to foot the bill to basically rebuild half of my truck. Old boss still's owed money through mandatory retirement payments and tells me if I don't like it to take it up with the authorities, so I did. Posted by My Nuts Are Musical. Here we go. A few years back now, I worked for a smallish locally owned company owned by two friends. The company was going strong when I started, but after 10 years there, the place was going downhill fast. One day, we discovered the bosses had not been making superannuation payments to us, which my country's required retirement fund that employees and employers are required to pay into, for over 2 years, owing tens of thousands over all the employees. This was the final straw for me, and I gave them 2 weeks' notice. As I was basically the last manager there, most of the employees also quit with me, and this really ticked off the owners who thought that I was somehow overreacting. I made them ensure that they would pay me what I was owed, or I would get the tax agency involved. A few weeks later, I get an email detailing repayments significantly less than what was owed. When I emailed back, they told me that they had taken hours I owed in time in lieu out of what was owed in superannuation, and if I had a problem with that, they would have no issue speaking with the authorities about the hours that I stole from them. This is, of course, highly illegal. For one, we had no contract laying out that I would have to repay owed hours. Secondly, they most definitely cannot take that money from my superannuation repayments. I decided not to reply, save the email, and move straight onto the tax agency, which they look after superannuation affairs. This took a very long time, as the process is very slow, but after about a year and several different tax representatives, I one day got a call out of the blue from one of the owners. This was a very angry, threatening call asking why I had reported them to the tax agency and why I was determined to ruin their lives. I told him exactly why I did it and that he reaped what he sowed. A few days later, I get an email from the tax agency telling me that they will be repaying all that was owed, plus interest accrued over the now 3+ years that they didn't pay. They would have also been put on a blacklist of employers had they not sold the business a few months after we left. For more background, after I quit, I took 2 weeks off to be alone with my thoughts and relax for a bit before accepting one of the many job offers that I received once my departure had been made public in our industry. I walked away with a higher pay, more secure job, and the position every company in the industry was fighting for at the time, as the company I chose won the contract and they gave the position to me. D-bag makes my life hard, so I ousted him for insurance fraud. Posted by Flying Donkey Dong 69. Here we go. A little over a year ago, I started working as an electrician with my dream company. I got good hours, $25 an hour, great coverage, and a crap ton of experience. My employer was a decent, family business kind of guy who always commended me on my work and understood whenever I needed to take time off, which I tried to limit to as little as possible. Yep, I was living the good working life. Until we hired Carl. Carl was a man's man, a big, beefy jock kind of dude who strived to be as manly as possible. Any guy who deviated from the path of manliness was relentlessly ridiculed and humiliated by Carl. Use gloves? Ridiculed. Hate spiders? Ridiculed. Pee sitting down because you're too lazy to stand and use a urinal? Ridiculed. This guy was an absolutely sickening sight to most guys on site, and I was one of, if not the most picked on guy. It seemed like that everything I did was an invitation for the guy to take a verbal dump on me. I brought it up to my employer, but Carl played the innocent card and somehow had people to help back him up on it. So the ridicule continued for a while until I had enough. This man was a thorn in my side for too long, so I wanted revenge. I didn't know how I'd do it, but I was determined to get this jerk back. Thankfully for me, Carl was a boaster, and he boasted about a lot of stuff that he really shouldn't have. One such thing was the time that he got away with insurance fraud. As he tells it, his parents used to spoil him rotten. In his early 20s, they bought him a car and insured it for everything. I'm talking fire, theft, vandalism, the whole 9 yards. But the ungrateful brute wasn't happy with the car they got him. They would have none of his complaining, and he would have to deal with it until he ran the car into the ground. That was until his friend suggested the crazy idea of falsifying an insurance claim. He reported his car stolen, and it was found by the police 3 days later, burned out in a back lot. His insurance net him a decent sum of money, which he then used to buy a better car and fully insure it. He even boasted about how the insurance company, in full name, never caught him and how stupid they were. This was how I'd get back at him. I let a coworker who was also sick of Carl in on the plan. I would record him admitting to committing insurance fraud and send a copy of the recording to the police and the insurance firm. I bought a little recording device and hid it in my pocket during work. When Carl was in earshot, I started up a conversation with my coworker about how I'd used to get away with stealing candy bars from a corner store that I lived by when I was a kid. As soon as Carl heard me, he retorted with a, "Ha, that's nothing," which I took as my cue to start recording. The fool of a man blathered out everything and did a good job giving details. At the end of it all, just to seal the deal, I said, "Really, Carl last name, criminal extraordinaire, got away with insurance fraud?" With his arms folded in triumph and a smug look upon his face, he replied, "You're dang right, I'm smarter than I look, huh?" That night, I took my proof home and converted it into an audio file on my computer, and I used a burner email account to send it to the local police station and his insurance company. 3 days later, Carl didn't come to work. He didn't come in the next few days either. I eventually learned that he got arrested at home and is currently on unpaid leave from work. Now, he's not fired, but he's not receiving money either, so it's just as bad as being fired. So, not a super big revenge story with a climactic ending, but I'm definitely satisfied with the outcome. New boss gives angry me an impossible task, posted by MD Laplup. I don't know if this is exactly malicious compliance, it's kind of a revenge story. I used to work for a big IT consulting company notorious for not paying overtime. I worked for a client's migration project for almost 1.5 years, leading the functional migration team. The 3 of us worked for the client 3 years before the start of the migration project, so we knew the data that we had to migrate, all the nuances, and 2 weeks before the migration date, 99% of that data was already migrated and validated. We only did the day-by-day new data and sag off pretty much those last 2 weeks. The other manager that outranked me became extremely angry about our calmness, because the part that she led was behind schedule due to bad scheduling, and everyone was being overworked because of her mishaps. Come migration date, which was Saturday starting at 9 a.m., everyone was expecting long hours of work. But we clocked out at noon with the data validated with the client and the go-ahead signed, sealed, and delivered. My team got a written commendation from the client. The manager's team spent the entire weekend there. She got a complaint letter from the client. The manager complained about us and made me and my senior analyst spend the next month waiting for incidences and bugs and complaints. We got 5 in the whole month. My senior analyst spent 8 hours a day studying a new language, and I took the chance to update my CV because I wanted out and pretty much help a couple former colleagues that needed to solve bugs and problems within the manager's team's responsibilities. A couple of weeks later, evaluation time. At the IT company, everyone was graded A to D, A being exceeding expectations and D being you're out of here. B was good, and C was pretty much, I'm starting to think you might not be good to work here. Given the commendation from the client, I was expecting an A. My evaluation was done by the manager and my mentor, which was a close friend with the manager. They gave me a C because we didn't see any pressure on your work, and you certainly lack motivation. I complained and took a long overdue, already planned month-long vacation. This was June. After that, back at work, I was assigned to a project on another client led by manager's husband. He wanted me to prepare 122 integrations with different systems in 4 months. I told him that in the previous project led by his wife, they took 2 years to have 12 integrations ready, but I would give it a shot. I even emailed him the planning where it clearly showed the time they took. 2 of those months were July and August, months that pretty much everyone on the client goes on holiday. Manager and wife also went on holiday pretty much all of August. I spent those 2 months chasing people around the client's office, but starting September, 6 integrations were closed and 6 more were almost closed pending validation. Manager came back from holidays and was furious. He called me a slacker and started telling me that his wife was right, that I lacked motivation, and that I would need to spend the rest of the project duration working till midnight to make up for the lost time. And I said, no, I won't do an hour more than what you're paying. I told you that your expectations were unrealistic, and you went ahead with them anyways. He went ballistic. And I replied, I just lack motivation to work in your project. I want out of the project. I was out of the project in no time. I got a call from my mentor. She said that they were evaluating firing me without pay because of this. I told them about the unrealistic planning, and she said that I was being unrealistic and that the planning was good. I produced the email that I sent the manager. My mentor went quiet. A minute later, she told me, what do you want? If you can't guarantee that I won't do an hour of overtime ever again, I want out, full severance, and then some, and I want the company to make it look like I quit, not that you fired me. She went quiet again. She said she'll see what she could do. I was out of there, smiling by the end of the day. Update. From the team that remained in the project, 4 guys were on my team before the migration project. They all complained, and they all got out of the project as well. As far as I know, the project took twice the expected time to be completed. Manager's husband got nearly fired. The wife held a lot of power and managed to save his butt. Fraudulent HOA extortion, posted by Tam Lee. I posted on here a while back with perhaps one of the craziest HOA stories around. I'm dealing with a fraudulent HOA at work in my neighborhood. This group calls itself a neighborhood fund, but when the neighborhood was subdivided, there was no HOA covenant added to deeds, thus no mandatory HOA. It was started by a resident as a temporary 3-year fix to the right-of-way road and has never ended, expanding to all kinds of neighborhood concerns. cutting down trees, no lanterns, too many cars, dealing with renters, and as a gossip email chain, nicknaming different properties with petty put-downs and a lot of other petty garbage. The leaders of this group outnumber the members by far. There have been about 7 different leaders. They hold the reserve funds and do a collection which goes directly into the leaders' private bank accounts, where they mix their personal money with the alleged communal funds. There are no elections, no articles of declaration, no financial disclosures. They use different email exchanges for people that they like and those that they don't to demand money, so it's never clear who is paying and who is not. We have seen communal funds being used to repair homes and driveways of the leaders of this fund. My family has refused to participate since 2012 due to what we believe is a misuse of funds. In 2016, I sent a certified cease and desist letter to the leader of this group, stating that the money demands needed to end. We began to be relentlessly harassed, where this leader started following us around the neighborhood when we were walking and honking her horn. We later learned that this fund and group actually is tied to the local town government in the small remote town where I live. The founder is the zoning board president and just keeps getting reappointed to that position for the last 15 years. 6 of its other leaders are all town planning and zoning officials. We have witnessed all kinds of kickbacks, with most recently 5 of this fund's leaders and members and their relatives being named to new created positions on the town board within the past 2 years. They have used their private email exchange to engage with their select members and non-board residents on local laws under current review, where the public is limited to 1 public session and so on. They have failed to recuse on issues brought by members of their HOA to the Zoning and Planning Board repeatedly. They get all special perks in government, such as private use of the community center when the public must pay a use fee, and help with grants and grant funding for their private employment. It's a mess. Last year, in June 2022, I had the newest leader of this group, a recently retired state official with a regional title, come to our private property and refuse to leave, delivering on us a personalized money demand. He was confrontational and argumentative when I told him to leave. He had previously trespassed twice on our property, caught on camera, and he knew he was not welcome on our property. I called the police, but the local police, or state police, in this remote region are also corrupt. They sent the relative of one of the leaders of this group, who happens to be a state trooper and also had lived in the neighborhood for a year, leaving 2 months prior to this incident, to take the complaint and to dispose of it. Flash forward to this May 2023, and this same individual/leader who demanded money brought a hired bulldozer and began digging up our driveway entrance and smashing our front fence so that the fence dislodged and we have a large hole in the slope of our driveway, which makes the car bounce and scrape. They have done this several times in the past as well. I videoed the whole event. I also have what I believe is a video of a white Escalade undercover police car passing by during the damage and before I called the police. The police refused to take action when we called to report the incident, and the supervisor told us that they were just pushing dirt around and they were just making a 3-point turn. He said this before they had even located the responsible party. They didn't even send a trooper to look at the damage. They didn't investigate, even though this was at the very least a hit and run. They have not given me the license or insurance of the tractor. In fact, the police officer assigned to the case told us that he couldn't find the people responsible, even though I told him it was the leader of the HOA. And he told me instead that he contacted a town government official and was evasive when we asked why. Since the property destruction, I have submitted a complaint to Internal Affairs alleging attempted extortion and detailing this unlawful slush fund being kept by town government officials. I am not sure Internal Affairs will do anything at all, and I may have to take this elsewhere. Sure, I can sue and may, but unfortunately, I have talked to 2 other families being similarly harassed by these town officials, and I learned that the county court is also corrupted. This is a very remote mountain region, and so things are quite corrupt and backwards around here. Legal fees to fight an HOA can be very high and prohibitive, especially if the fight is already an uphill battle. Not only do we have to fight this fraudulent HOA, but the corrupt town government and the corrupt police. I believe I have enough evidence, video, written records, and photos that they are attempting to extort us and that the way they are raising money is fraudulent since it is all undeclared. In my state, New York, mandatory and voluntary HOAs must file taxes and register as a nonprofit court where they then fall under review of the Attorney General. However, the Attorney General does not take up a case where the state is a party. They won't go against state interests, such as state police. I'm posting this if anyone has any advice or specific knowledge about extortion, fraudulent money raising, police corruption, and so on. Updates in the comments section. Ben Skywalker 70 asked OP, take everything, keep copies, to the state DA. Once you have refusal in writing, go fed. And OP replies, interesting, I didn't consider the state DA. Right now, it's supposedly being reviewed by the county DA, but my feeling is this person will not do anything. Next commenter asked, what are the odds that they're related to these same buttholes you've been dealing with all along? And they really meant the estate attorney general. And OP replies, yeah, probably. I'm not from the US. I was meaning going above the DA that is potentially corrupt. I think I may have misspoke, probably meant the state attorney general, going above your local DA. Another commenter says, bet they're not paying taxes, and OP replies, they're 100% not, but not sure the IRS would do anything. OP gives another update and says, I placed FOIA request. I know there was no body cam kept for the investigation part of my report, and I also have 30 videos of multiple police vehicles coming and going from my private road in relation to this fund, meeting with the fund's leaders. Unfortunately, where I am, there are no local police, just state police, as it is very remote. Sadly, the superintendent was just fired for corruption like a year ago by the governor. I thought internal affairs will probably do nothing. It just seemed like my hands were a bit tied since state police are governed by the superintendent. Not sure if internal affairs might be better for state police? I do think they will likely retaliate. I mean, I'm probably not as afraid as I should be. I have 10 cameras on my property. Luckily, it is a part-time place, so I'm only there a few months of the year. I have a pit bull and a German Shepherd. I actually really wish I understood a little more about keeping funds and laws around that. Like, is it illegal to commingle funds, or is it just considered not good or unethical? I don't know the laws regarding raising funds either. Like, is it legal to go to someone's door soliciting for an HOA-type entity? I know in my state, HOAs need to incorporate and file taxes, but this group keeps trying to claim that they are informal. I don't think this argument helps them at all, but I wish I had more financial knowledge because I think I would strengthen my case. I mean, in my case, the person definitely knew he was not allowed on my property demanding money and refused to leave. But I don't really know the laws on this more generally. I know like solicitors have to get permits in my town, and I've spoken to some lawyers and, to be honest, not all of them know the financial specifics either. It seems to fall outside of some of the standard specialties. I beat the HOA. I won't be forced to join. Go Lawyers! Posted by Danakius. So, earlier this month, I purchased a property in real estate lien auction. The property was in a voluntary HOA that had 100% membership. My attorney looked into the situation and drafted a proposal and sent it to the HOA via registered mail. He drafted up a proposal agreement with the HOA with the following conditions. First off, the property owner has unrestricted access to any community-owned roadways, gates, and so on necessary to access his property. Now, this does not constitute joining the HOA also. The property owner will have to pay a figure monthly to the HOA to contribute to the non-government-owned infrastructure at his discretion. The amount is non-negotiable and not legally required. It's merely an acknowledgement that the assets exist and have cost for their upkeep. Now, the property owner will not be held to any HOA standards and does not and will not get any voting rights in the HOA also. any further attempts to get the property owner to join will be considered harassment. Now, cashing of these attached checks constitutes agreeing to these terms, and the HOA will provide any necessary access codes for the property owner to use for visitors, contractors, and so on. They received it and signed for it. That day, the harassment from the HOA stopped. A week later, their attorney sent back a response. Danakius, the HOA board has met. They do not appreciate your unneighborly attitude and are not agreeing to your terms. However, they acknowledge that your claim to unrestricted access to your property may have legal merit if the issue is taken to court. I have been instructed to give you a gate access code attached below. You will not be given a key fob to the gate, as it would give you unrestricted access to their clubhouse. Furthermore, they are notifying you of the following. The roadway and sidewalk are both HOA property, and they reserve the right to remove any illegally parked vehicles or other property. This is, however, a legal acknowledgement that you will not be held to their community standards. They are also requesting some leeway regarding harassment, as community notices may inadvertently be delivered. Finally, they are returning the check uncashed. Signed, the HOA attorney. I'm not quite understanding how. This doesn't constitute them agreeing to my terms, though. They are giving me everything I want and are turning down my gift towards the upkeep of the road and gate. Updates in the comments. Sean Bezier posts this and OP replies with more. He says, you have access, so you can give the key code out to anybody who wants to visit you or has to come to you. So you cannot park on the road or the sidewalk, so it's time to put up a nice fence up on the edge of your property with the no trespassing signs on it, paint a yellow line at the border with your driveway and the sidewalk, and keep the number of the HOA towing company, should be posted by the gate, in your phone to call for towing if anybody parks by the driveway, plus a camera to cover this area as well. They change the gate code immediately, you sue them, especially if you were not communicated in this in advance. Also, invite all of your immediate neighbors over for a welcome party to make yourself known as the good person in the area. And OP replies, yeah, the only thing you left out was a gaudy neon paint job on the house and an inflatable hot tub in the front yard and 8 non-functioning vehicles in the front yard. I mean, as long as I'm not blocking the driveway, right? So I put in a call to a solar company to come out and to do a quote on installing solar, completely not allowed by the HOA bylaws. So I'm going to have to do it for sure. Now note, I'm not going to finance it, no contract and so on. That's how those turkeys make their money. All joking aside, today I mowed my lawn, started at 7 a.m. before it got too hot and knocked that out. Since I measured twice, I'm going to cancel my long-term parking for my RV and move it there, since my driveway is plenty long enough. Plus, I can sleep in the RV while I'm getting the house into livable shape. I'd throw a party, but the big issue with that is that it's not livable yet, as in, it's a toxic disaster and I can't live in it. I have a call for a 12-foot dumpster to come in as well, and the trash company is going to drop it in the driveway. I'm also in the market for the tallest and ugliest ham radio tower I can get. No actual interest in using though, just in case. Sean replies, keep the neighbors happy, just put solar on and enough LED spots all aimed to cover the property without spill that the street lights look dim by comparison. Dumpster on the lawn, not on the street. You can fix the lawn after it leaves, citing the reason it is on the lawn as the HOA busybodies not wanting it on the street for some reason, so lawn it is. No need for a tower, just look at the approved color list and paint just a few shades different, not garish, just enough to distinguish from the surrounds. Follow with making the contrasting colors different from the rest and put a nice door trim color in. Subtle, but it works so much better. Oh yes, first find the boundaries and mark them off with some post and danger tape, and follow up with that orange construction temporary plastic fencing because you're going to be working there and want to not damage the HOA property in any way. Safety first. Nothing ticks off the busybody Karens more than subtle, especially if you're keeping within the letter of the law for the township you are in, but not the HOA ones. And OP replies, once I move in, I'm getting an above ground pool because the HOA rules say no. Commenter Little Bit Evil says, I don't see an attorney using unprofessional language as in unneighborly attitude. I'm doubting it was an attorney who responded and impersonating one could cause trouble. I'm sure your attorney is going to have some fun, especially over the roads and sidewalks part. OP replies, screw them either way. They stopped harassing me about joining and hopefully took the hint. In reply, I'm betting since it's a voluntary HOA, the street and the sidewalk are still city easements. Your local clerk can confirm if you show them any documents of the HOA trying to claim ownership, and then the city will have legal grounds for action. OP replies, the legal status is convoluted. It's not mandatory, but they only sold the properties to people who signed the HOA documents. One of the first documents they force you to sign is a right of first refusal when selling the property, as in, you are giving the HOA the right of first refusal. In simple terms, if the person you're selling to doesn't want to sign the HOA documents, the HOA can instead buy the property back for the same price you're offering it for and then resell it themselves, but only to someone who signs the documents. Instead of doing all that, they can just butt their heads in and threaten the buyer with blocking their sale unless they sign the HOA documents. This has kept HOA membership at 100%. Until I came around. I bypassed all of the signing of the HOA by buying the property at a sheriff's auction. The state gave no craps about the contract. All they cared about was the court orders to sell the property to repay the lien holders. HOA story time. Everything the association does causes damages. Posted by Bustacode. Just a vent, but this stuff is getting old. Single family home, about 50 units. Seems this association finds the most incompetent vendors and unleashes them on the residents. First off, they hired a power washing company to clean siding. It left everyone's windows spotted and the overspray affected car finishes. Most homes are 2 stories and we can't clean our windows. They even hired an irrigation company to repair broken underground feeder pipes. They cut my underground cable TV and internet cable when digging up the yard. And now, a landscaping company is ripping out all the plants and rocks around every home, doing a halfway butt job, and just found out that one of the workers deliberately cut a cable on my property going into my house. Found out the total cost of that project was over $250,000. Several of us have mice problems. The HOA document states that the HOA is 100% responsible and owns all outside walls. I asked the HOA to remedy our mice problems, and nope, not their responsibility. Well, how else are the mice getting in if not through their walls? So we asked the management company to follow bylaws and post date, time, and place of each meeting in accordance with the bylaws. No. We even asked the management company to post the minutes of past monthly meetings in accordance with the bylaws. Blown off and never posted. We sent in the request for approval to replace a sliding door. We have a sign-off form for that. And after much chatter among the HOA board, I get an email saying only approved. The door company refused to accept that and said that we won't install the door until they see that the request was signed off officially. In a few days, we're going to have our dryer vents blown out, but really in as they're doing it from the outside. No opt-out, so I guess I'll just have lint blown into my dryer. My neighbor has had to purchase asphalt on his own and repair a huge pothole on HOA-owned road, as the management company did nothing about it for three whole years. I'm just really beginning to hate it here and dealing with all these stupid issues. I once was helpful around here, fixing children's playground equipment for free, doing small jobs for the association so they didn't need to pay huge fees for tiny projects. No more of that. Do you agree with this idea to get some lawyers? Not posting meetings, agendas, or minutes are probably just a violation of law, not just bylaws depending on your state. Throwing a couple $100 at a lawyer to write a letter informing them of the laws that are breaking might convince them to get their act together, or at least leave the job to someone who will. The lawyer can mention the other issues where the HOA is breaching their duty as well. It's somewhat counterproductive to sue your HOA since you'll end up paying whether you win or lose, but the threat of a lawsuit can be effective. How would you handle this one? HOA yells at me for training guide dog and grilling, and then loses position on the board. Posted by Judas 697734. So to start the story, some background you need to know about me. I volunteer to train and raise service dogs. My fiance says clearly I have a look that says I am weak and I'm a pushover. I have constant encounters with Karens who are just not ready for my responses when they engage me. I have been in the military for 17 years when this happened, and I was responsible for managing over 130 service members. I'm anything but a pushover. I work with civilians, so I have cultivated a polite exterior because I was counseled for looking unapproachable and scary to civilian counterparts. The story, as I said, I raise service animals, so I fall under the ADA when it comes to regulations on where and what I can do with my puppy. We'll call him O. O is an amazingly behaved black lab of 6 months. I have cultivated a level of trust and obedience where I can leave him in a sit with other dogs around so long as I am in eyesight. He will stay. I have raised a few pups by then, and I would have never done that with them, but O is amazing, and I can't wait to get him back after his tour of duty helping Mrs. C be independent. I meet the HOA Karen one Saturday. Me, my fiance, and O were going to head on a road trip to visit my fiance's parents. In our preparation, the last on the list is always getting the kids to use the bathroom before a long trip. So we head out, O gets busy, and I grab a bag to clean it up. I put him in a sit stay and then hand the leash to my girl, and I start walking to the trash can. It's about 100 feet from where he went. I have a clear line of sight to the dog, and he is sitting pretty and alert and watching me intently for a hand cue or a voice command. As I am walking, I hear a womanly screech. I don't quite make it out, but it sounds angry. I ignore it and keep walking to the dumpster to deposit my waste bag and turn around to head back to my 2 favorite people. It is then I make eye contact with the HOA Karen. Karen from here on out. She is your typical Karen, not an inch over 5 feet and has the same circumference. The short chopped hair says that I'm the manager now. She looks me in the eyes and I finally listen to her shrill scream of, "Your dog must be on a leash and in your hand. My county state law says so and I will call the cops." Now, I don't do ignorant, and respect given is respect earned. I was willing to try and de-escalate. My fiance owns the condo and is super non-confrontational. So for her, I try to bring it back down to civil levels of discussion. In a polite but firm voice, I asked if she even looked over at the dog before she started yelling at me. She just bellows like a banshee again, and I repeat. This back and forth happens 3 or 4 times. Me calm, her escalating in pitch and volume. At this point, she hasn't given respect, so none is required to be given back. I break out my "you done screwed up" NCO to junior voice. It is loud, it's firm, and it clearly states that I'm done with your bullcrap, lady. I clearly tell her if she would have taken 2 seconds to look, she would see that the dog is sitting on a leash in someone's hands. She stops bellowing at me, looks, turns a bit red in the face, and then musters, "You could just say thank you." To which I curtly reply, "Shut the heck up and get out of my face." She waddled quickly off, tail tucked into the condo door. My next meeting with her was when I was grilling. The HOA states no charcoal grills and no smoking or barbecue. I was born in the north, but as a military brat, moved to the south since I was 2. There is a difference between barbecuing and grilling. Barbecue is 12 plus hours with coals or hardwood or wood smoking. Grilling is cooking meat on a grill instead of the stove. The HOA put out a reminder, no barbecuing on the premises and no coals. So I was like, awesome, get a small propane grill. It's not barbecue, but it's better than nothing. So I was out grilling and I hear the banshee cry all too familiar now. Again, she didn't come up to me and talk. She just started screaming. So I looked her right in the eye and with the same firm voice, "Shut the heck up and go away. If you say one more word, I'll be the one calling the cops for harassment by an HOA member." She sputtered something about no grilling or open flames, and I told her to screw off, show me in writing by someone else other than her. She waddled off, and then I was approached by the HOA president with the HOA bylaws, and I sat down to read them, during which my fiance started a conversation with them about another issue that we were having with them. She was in the middle of having the state attorney's office ask some questions about activities that they were trying to force her into paying for. It wasn't going well for the HOA, and she took this opportunity to introduce herself. While she may be non-confrontational when it comes to small things, she will stand up for herself when it comes to it. Her introducing herself changed everyone's tone, and they became oh so polite. Karen tried to play the victim to her and say that I was mean and could use some manners when engaging with people. I loved my soon-to-be wife, and she let her paint her tale how she was a victim. When she finished, she looked her dead in the eyes and said, "You know, I was the one holding the leash, and I was standing right here when he was grilling, so nah, you got the same respect that you gave." She paled and faded to the back, and that's when the president of the HOA stepped in and told me that I can't have the grill and that I can be fined and I needed to follow the rules of the HOA, or next time he'll be the one calling the cops. Well, President, roger that. It is my job to enforce regulations in the military. I spend hours reading instructions. Nothing pleases me more than when I can shove the black and white in a butthole's face at work to get my guys what they are owed or to force them to do the job right. So, you want me to follow the rules? Copy that, buddy. So I began my research, and I found a few interesting things. First off, no HOA bylaw can be enforced if it is not in the state database. Next, this particular HOA's bylaws were last updated in 1994. It was 2016. They state that they follow my county's fire code, which follows NFPA. And finally, the gem, the exact latitude and longitude coordinates of the HOA's property lines. So I get a login for the state's database and print the HOA's bylaws. I print the NFPA, which states in a multifamily home you can store propane tanks no bigger than 2.7 liters, but they can total no more than 5.4 liters cumulatively. I go to Lowe's, I get a rope tape measure, and I get some stakes. I pull up Google Maps and mark that HOA boundary line on it. Lo and behold, what do I find? A drainage ditch that is city property not 10 feet from where I was grilling. So I take my coordinates, my stakes, and I go carefully mark off the section of city property. Now, for the revenge. I call the city and county fire departments and request a permit to grill on said city property. They said, go for it. I didn't need a permit for it. No one would care. I insisted, and they said, it's my $50. They issued and an event open flame, so with both permits it was $100, but I got permission from the city to grill there for 6 months. The next day at 0700 hours, I went to set up. I carefully measured so that I was at least 3 feet into the city property. I set up my cooler with enough meat and beer to grill till doomsday, and then I waited for the fireworks. It didn't take long for Karen to come screaming at me. I mean, I was 10 feet from the community pool and 3 feet from the sidewalk gazebo that led to the pool. I just hit record on my phone and politely told her that she has no need to yell and I am breaking no laws. She kept screaming about no grilling and how she is tired of me and she is going to get me arrested and kicked out if it's the last thing she does. She hasn't liked me since she saw me and has just been waiting to get me kicked out. Now that she knows which condo is mine, it's just a matter of time till she finds something. On and on. I guess me polite and showing zero fear was ticking her off, so she tried to come take my stuff. Big no-no. As she reached for my cooler, I broke out my NCO voice and told her if she so much as brushes a finger against my property, I would remove the offending body part with force if necessary. This sent her scurrying off again. About 20 minutes later, I see 2 cop cars pull up and Mr. HOA president himself. He is all chummy with the cops, and as they approach, I hear him say, "Yep, same guy. I already told him once before, he can't grill on the HOA grounds." He comes to a stop about 10 feet from me. One cop stays with him, and the other keeps walking up to me. I have a crap-eating grin on my face, and I can hardly wait for the conversation to happen. The cop is slightly off-put by my joyous face and my slight giggle when I ask what seems to be the problem, officer. I get informed that I am in violation of the bylaws and have been warned once already, and I am going to receive a ticket for disturbing the peace for threatening the HOA when they were trying to enforce the rules, ticket for an illegal open flame, a ticket for illegal storage of flammable substances, on and on. The last was, if I didn't pack up, I would be arrested and removed. Now that he was done, I first handed him my permit from the city to grill. He took it, walked back to the president, and they discussed it for a moment, and then returned. He says, "You can't get a permit from the city to grill on private property." I then showed him the coordinates for the HOA and the Google Maps gridded drawing and my current GPS location. Mind you, I am smiling, handing sheet after sheet to him because the grid was not all on one sheet and had addendums. It took about 4 minutes to explain it to him. As I was about to hand him more, he held up a hand to stop me. He then asked how long I had planned this, with a smirk. Well, I told him, about a week. He gave me a look of disbelief, but moved on. He then asked me if I threatened Karen. I just played back the recording to him, and then at the end, he said, "Nothing seems out of place here. You are free to go." I stopped him and asked if I could file a complaint for HOA harassment through him. He said, no, that the city clerk office is the correct place, but he would document harassment by the two of them and file the report for me. In my state, it's illegal to be harassed by the HOA. It comes with jail of a few months, fines as high as $5,000, and immediate removal from the board, and the possibility of recovery of damages. I settled for them both being removed from the board instead of filing a complaint. I waved to Karen every day I grill or showed her my leash if I had O. Funny comment about a HOA. Says, a good HOA is a unicorn. We're not actually sure one exists, but there are rumors. Of course, it could just be a broken down old horse with a horn glued to its forehead, and you don't realize the truth until you've bought into it. The HOA is taking advantage of a veteran in this story. How would you handle it? This is by Real Estate Toss. Hi Reddit, I'm a first-time homebuyer running into some seriously weird issues with an HOA and curious about the legality of some of the stunts that they're pulling. I'm a veteran using the VA loan. Nothing is closed yet, but things are getting close enough to start worrying. My partner and I are purchasing a condo unit in Chicago. We've already agreed to a price with the seller, and our lender has approved the loan, and the appraisal and inspection are both completed as well. When it came time to drop off some money orders to the front office, we started seeing some serious problems. The building manager was great, up until we handed her the sales contract and the number for money down was still blank. Our lender told us to leave this blank for the time being, just so the VA loan stuff could clear, and it didn't need to be there until way closer to closing anyway. Now here's where the fun starts. The building manager asked what our loan to value was rather quickly, and we were stumped because as newbies, we aren't great with a lot of terms. We told her that we were doing a VA loan, and she immediately snaps back with, "Oh, so do you have the 20 months of assessment fees available to pay?" We had absolutely no idea what she was talking about and let her know that. She prints off page 22 and 23 of their 40-page HOA rulebook and shows us a clause buried in there where if you put down 0%, you owe 20 months of assessment fees. She did some quick math to show that we would end up owing just shy of what a 10% down payment would look like. She also included 2 parking spots and cable and internet. The parking spots are on a wait list, and we were like 8 spots down. So she pulled those numbers right out of thin air, and the cable and internet is already on the assessment fee, and she listed it again. So I'm feeling like it's pretty obvious that she's trying to scare us off. It doesn't end there. She's also requesting that we each file a credit report through a company that they use. Again, after we've already been through this with our lender and bank and received credit scores from Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. I asked if they could just get this done from our lender since it's already been done, and I was given a stern no, it has to be through this specific company. They gave us a number, an extension, and asked for a name. For what it's worth, both of our credit scores are very good, certainly more than sufficient for this place. They've also requested that the next HOA board meeting they have, that we meet them remotely so that they can basically interview us, and it sounds like they're going to approve us moving in. The 20 months of assessment payments were provided in the HOA rulebook that they gave us, but we didn't receive it at the beginning when we were discussing with the seller. It was also buried in an email with a total of 63 PDFs, only one of which was the rulebook. Everything else was just cover pages, meeting minutes, small potatoes, and nothing pages. No one except the HOA was aware of this 20-month assessment fee. Not us, our realtor, lawyer, and lender, the seller's broker, the seller's lawyer. No one had a clue until we told them the building manager hit us with it, and everyone is arguing that this fee should have been front and center. Also, none of us, seller's side included, have ever heard of such a clause, and we're all in agreement that this sounds absolutely insane. Our lender told us to basically tell them to kick rocks on having our credit hit again for their report, as this is a pretty bad thing to do during a major purchase. If they want credit scores, they can get them from him if he even deems it necessary. Our realtor suspects that voting in people in the building sounds like something a co-op does and doubts this is even legal. Our lawyer is looking into how they got around this being a form of discrimination. So I'm wondering if anyone has seen anything like this. How can we hack this apart? Is this stuff even legal? Even if we beat these fees, what are the odds that the HOA just messes with us the entire time we're there? It isn't too late to back out and cut our losses, but it's getting way too close to let it go. OP has a realization and says, yeah, this is sounding like a huge nightmare. Even if we get around all their bullcrap, I don't think I want to deal with them for however long we stay. Man, this is not just a red flag. These people own the whole red flag store. OP, run as fast as you can, man. They'll just take advantage of you if you move in. What do you think? No, Karen, I won't wash your car. Posted by Potential Drive 8623. This happened 3 days ago, and I still don't know what Karen was thinking, but working in retail for close to 20 years, I'm not shocked. So we have me as the OP, we have Karen, the neighbor guy, and then the guy who owns the lodge. Okay, so the setting, it's a hot and sunny Thursday afternoon, and I wrapped up work since I work very early mornings on Thursdays, and I get the afternoon off. I decided to wash my car since it got covered in dust from gravel roads, and being surrounded by lakes, the front gets covered in bugs. Gross, I know. So I break out my equipment power washer, foam blaster, buckets, new car soap, speaker to listen to music, and a little cooler with refreshments. I just finished spraying my car to spray soap on to clean when my neighbor, who was also washing his Escalade, waved me over. Neighbor says, "Hey OP, can I ask you for some help?" I say, "Yeah, sure, what's up?" "Hey, can you blast that dirt off of the bottom for me? The missus took the car out and somehow this happened." I took a quick look. It's got some mud, pretty good caked on, but not impossible to get off. "Yeah, sure," I say, "this will just take just a couple minutes or so." So I brought my pressure washer over, turned it on, and started spraying the dirt off while rocking out the Nickelback. Only took about 3, maybe 4 minutes, and I got it off. Neighbor says, "Hey, those things work great cleaning. I need to invest in one. Thanks, OP." I say, "Sure thing, neighbor. Happy to help." So I wrapped up and resumed my car washing while enjoying Nickelback's album Dark Horse when a dirty Lincoln stops behind my car and the lady is waving me over. Now I should explain that I live at the end of the road and we don't have anything people would drive to unless you're visiting someone, and the main road is close to 8 blocks away. So yeah, not many cars drive by my house. Anyway, I walk up to the lady's car to see what she wants. Maybe she's lost or she can't find someone's house. Nope, I was wrong. Here's the conversation. I say, "Yes, can I help you, ma'am?" And she says, "Yes, since you just finished, can you wash my car? Also, I'd like the seats and carpets cleaned as well." I'm confused for a minute and I reply, wait, what? Didn't you hear what I said? I'd like my car cleaned. I just got this and it's already got dirt and bugs on it." Sorry, but no, I'm not going to. But there is a couple of car washes down the main street, and I think the shops offer it too. Karen, who clearly never was told no, looks at me and goes, "Why would I do that? You have everything to do it here. Just do it. You wash that guy's car. Now do the same for me, and make sure to use wax as well." I reply, No, I didn't wash his car. I just quickly helped him to get the dirt off. I'm only washing my car. What did you say? Fine. How much for a wash? She replies. What? What? Can't you hear? I said, how much? Lady, I don't know who you are, and frankly, I don't care. I'm only washing my car. If you need your car washed, go downtown. What now? Honestly, what is wrong with you kids today? You don't want to work and get money. This is ridiculous. She did go into a little tirade that I won't go into, but then she gassed it down towards Main Street. I look at my neighbor. We both shook our heads and resumed what we were doing. About 3 hours later, I was busy playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 when someone rang my doorbell. I stopped playing and I went to go see who it was, and I opened the door and I see a guy standing there. He says, "Hi, I'm the guy who owns the lodge. Did a lady ask you if you can wash her car?" I reply, "Yeah, some lady did, and she acted kind of like a toddler when I told her no. Why?" He says, "That lady was complaining that the guy over there was rude and didn't want to help her. If you see her, just ignore her. I'm not going to let them stay here anymore. The husband is nice, but she's a piece of work." So I reply, "Okay, sure, but just out of curiosity, there's a lodge over there?" The other guy laughs and says, "Yeah, we only do it over the summer and about 3 weeks during the winter." So in one day, I learned that Karens can come at you anywhere and anytime, and I live about 2 blocks away from a lodge. A very interesting day. So funny update here, a commenter says, "You had a chance to go, how much? $10? No, $10,000. No refunds or reclamations payable in advance." And OP says, "I should have, but after working 10 hours, I wasn't thinking, but if it happens again, I will." Client tried to screw me by locking me out of my own system, posted by Axel RAFN. I've worked as an independent contractor in the IT field for over 20 years, doing all manner of things from creating simple HTML sites to managing a big hotel's complete IT infrastructure. One of the many clients I had back in the day I was coding big-ish custom websites was a rental company. Now, I had heard a lot of warnings about not working with this guy that owned it. He had a reputation that was sharp as a tack, backstabbing and conniving. He was a lawyer after all. So I went into the partnership with that in mind. He wanted a new website for his renting gig where people would list their home for rent, renters would sign up and pay a subscription to the site, and he would get the whole lot. Nothing out of the ordinary there. So we make a pretty good deal on paper, we sign it, and I get started on the project. Coding everything in PHP goes well, but he demands suddenly that I show him progress only a week into the project. He wants to see the website front now. This is just the tip of the iceberg. I tried explaining to him that the front end work isn't scheduled to start until after 6 weeks of back end programming, and that I only had pure code to show right now. The contract we signed clearly states this. He then gets on his high horse and demands that I put everything on hold to do the front end first, design and then program. I, being really young at the time and fairly naive, agreed to this without asking for it to be added to the contract as an addendum and start working on the design now. Now, the contract stated that I was given free reign of the design decisions as long as I maintained the same color scheme and used the same logo on the site. So I make a fast draft in Fireworks. This was back when it was a Macromedia product before the Adobe acquisition, and within 2 days, I show him. He's not impressed and demands a different direction and sets up a list of demands. I, as always, aim to please the customer and do just what he wants. I design a new layout with his list of demands, but he doesn't like that either. That's how the next 3 months go, a never-ending circle where he is never happy with anything. Now, close to 4 months into the project, he demands to see a working showcase of the back end. I point out that he himself changed the order in how the project was being done and had demanded that I do the front-end design first instead of the back-end as stated in the contract. which he now turns on to me and says, "Yes, the contract we both signed says that you will have a working back-end to show me at the end of the month. If you don't honor that, I will have to take my business elsewhere and seek compensation for your lack of professionalism." Okay, I now have 12 days to do a back-end for the site. So I get a friend to help me, and we work tirelessly through a weekend, and I have a good base to work from in 9 days. Mind you, at this point, he has only paid the security on the contract, which is about 5% of the total price, and has shielded himself from paying by hiding behind, "Well, if you can't honor the contract, why should I? Finish this work, and then I'll pay you as per the contract." Remembering now all the warnings I had heard about this guy, I decide to add a special function to the code just to be safe. More on that later. So now it's the end of the month, and we have a front-end design he is okay with, a back-end that has been finished to about 85% of what's required according to the contract, and I still have 1 month left to finish everything else. Time for show and tell. Since I was working on this development, I was running it on my own dev server, and I showed him this in a browser on his computer. I mentioned to him that since I only had 512 kilobits per second upstream from the server, it might lag a little, but it wouldn't when it would be put on the productional server that he has his website on at his hosting company. He says that's okay, and the demonstration goes on. As I'm showing him the site, both front end and back end, I can see he's immensely happy with it, although he would never say so out loud. He's trying to hide a smile that pops up regularly, and his eyes gleam with all the added ways that he can start making money from. Anyway, he now says that it's way too slow. This is wrong, that is wrong, blah blah blah. I want you to put it up on my production server and see how the speed is. Okay, no problem, I can make that happen. Please pay 50% of the contract and I'll get right on it. Okay, I wait a few days and then I get an email from him where he includes a forwarded message from the bank detailing a transaction from him to me to the amount of the 50% I asked for. So I push the system to his production server so he can take a look at it. It's under beta, his domain.tld. I then send him an email stating that he can try the system with the supplied credentials. What he doesn't know is that I knew he had been fishing around for another programmer to do this project, to, quote, pick up from a lazy deadbeat who couldn't do anything right. So I knew he would most likely try to screw me. What I also suspected was that the email he sent me with the transaction proof was a fake, which it ended up being. Pro Revenge 1. Remember that small function I mentioned? Well, what it did was, if user X, his user, tries to remove user Y, my admin, from the system without one setting being changed in the config first, the system will first delete and purge the database, and then remove all the documents in the web root. Well, not 5 minutes after he reads the email from me, he does just that. He tries to delete my admin user from the system to lock me out. Guess who has nothing of the project left? He does. Pro Revenge 2. Since it's considered forgery to spoof an email, especially from a bank, I sent the information to the authorities and he goes under investigation by both the police and the bank lawyers. Pro Revenge 3. I sold the system to a competitor of his for a better price than originally contracted to him, and last I knew, he was now blacklisted from owning a company, as well as he lost his right to work as a lawyer. I only got that 5% that he paid at the beginning, and for working for just over 5 months on this project, that's hardly anything. But the knowledge of his demise will keep my heart warm for the rest of my life. Neighbor is bat crap crazy, pretending to be an HOA president, charging us fake fees, and saying she owns the outside entirely. Posted by Snooperoo. Hi guys, this is gonna be a doozy, but we really need some help. We just moved into a duplex, and our Karen neighbor is an actual nutcase. We are friends with the landlord's daughter, and we actually have discussed how crazy this woman is, and for convenience, I will refer to her as the Karen, because she must be patient zero of this Karen epidemic. We've discussed how the Karen has got herself into some legal trouble with the past owner and the past tenant. We don't know the exact details, which we plan on trying to get, but don't know if we can get much about the past tenant, as they basically zipped off across country once they realized that Karen will not stop. But we know that the past owner sued her and that the past tenant had a restraining order against her from assault, and she got arrested shortly for not giving a rat's butt about the order and still harassed them. We thought we knew what we were getting into moving into the duplex. 2 days before the move, we Amazoned a package over. Specifically, one that just contained window films and a curtain rod, as we have no blinds or curtains of any sort in the rental and we wanted to install them as soon as we moved in. We knew how crazy the Karen was and didn't want to put our real name in it, which I realized might have been a bad decision. And I thought it'd be funny to put a secession reference in and address it to first name of Mo, last name of Lester. It was delivered a few hours before we arrived to move, and Amazon even took a photo of the package delivered. When we arrived yesterday, it was gone. We're pretty sure that Karen full-blown stole it, but we don't have any footage, although she does have cameras set up around the property for her own self, which in itself alone is kind of invasive and creepy. We don't know if we should report her, and who we would even report this to. We really wanted to use it, and now we have no privacy whatsoever, and we're currently very low on money due to the move, so we can't just get another one. As we were moving yesterday, which was so stressful, and I was running on 2 hours of sleep, she just comes on over and practically demands that we talk to her by saying that she wanted to get to know us and quickly go over the rules of occupying our side of the duplex. My husband didn't even want to really entertain her and said, we might have a few minutes. But she said, well, this is going to take more than a few minutes, and I am the president of the HOA committee. She was immediately extremely confrontational, and it was as if we were being interrogated when she asked our names and even wanted us to show her our faces as we were wearing face masks, and we still wear face masks to avoid COVID. She started just yapping about how we only may do modifications to the rental inside, as she owns the entire property outside. No bright or patterned curtains or blinds, as it's inconsistent with the aesthetic, and even claims she has full access to our basement, which is not true. Our landlord's daughter was saying that the HOA bylaws state that the outside property is not 50-50 and nobody owns more or less than the other when it comes to the outside. We simply share it. She was just spitting out lies after lies and even claiming that our landlord is basically nasty and created so many problems for her. Funnily enough, the problems that she stated our landlord gave her are the problems that she gave to our landlord and her daughter. She also gave us these 2 supposed legal documents she wanted to sign, like us understanding the rules of the HOA and the property and our application for renting this property. This document says we need to pay her a few fees, such as the application fee, which is non-refundable, $100 per person, pet fees, water fees, even though our landlord has been paying the water bill and she hasn't, and so on. How do we go about this? Are we legally liable for anything? Do we get a lawyer ready or what? We do not want her to continuously harass us, and we do not want to pay her for such fees. She pretends to be the president of the HOA and gives our landlord and her daughter fake legal papers that state they need to pay her, so we are expecting that she will hand some over to us as well. We really do not want to go through all the fighting her with it not resulting to anything, and her just harassing us our entire lease. Our landlord's daughter said that she's basically been in hiding to avoid the process server that has been trying to serve her, so she was surprised that she came out of her cave to talk to us. We are wondering if there's anything we can do to stop her in the future from giving us legal documents that have fake fees and rules, and how to tell her that we can actually use the lawn in the backyard. We already have a recording of the entire conversation we had yesterday for future reference should we proceed anything legal with her ourselves. We already have the contact info of the previous owner who previously sued her, and we will ask what the full case against her is of our landlord and her daughter. We just want to know what to do on our end, as we are the one facing her ugly head. Now there's an update in the comments. One poster asked OP, I would not accept any paperwork from her and would not speak to her either, politely but firmly refuse and state, as renters, we have no legal relationship with you, only with our landlord. You must direct any questions to the landlord and all communications must go through our landlord. An HOA is for owners only. We are not owners. And OP says, Thanks so much for this. We honestly feel like a deer in headlights being in this situation, but your comment has calmed us down a lot. New neighbors are, admittedly, very annoying, but one of the HOA board members is asking me to join her in taking pictures of their violations so they can be fined. I'm feeling very conflicted. Posted by DreamBean94. I thought you kind, like-minded folks would be able to help me out with this situation. We live in a townhouse community with HOA. There are about 4 to 5 townhouses per cluster, maybe 10 to 12 clusters, so it's not a huge neighborhood. Very quiet. It's the biggest reason why we moved here. The HOA is okay. I mean, I don't love having an HOA, but ours isn't as bad as some of the horror stories that I've read. They're not too strict and crazy, and we haven't had any huge issues with them. One of the board members lives 2 doors down. She'll call in parking violations and such, so homeowners get reminder letters, which is slightly annoying, but she's not crazy vindictive and doesn't start drama. We had new neighbors move in right next to us a couple weeks ago, and truthfully, they are so annoying. I can't believe that I'm the one saying this. Look, here's what's been going on. They have 2 little dogs who they've been letting run around without a leash in our shared backyard area. We all have back decks and a large lawn that's shared and owned by the HOA. I don't hate dogs, but I also don't like random dogs that I don't know running up to me anywhere, let alone on my deck when I'm just trying to chill. They chain smoke out back to the point where we can't open any of our back windows or doors because the smoke comes right inside. We also can't sit out on our own deck without breathing in their cloud of smoke. This issue is particularly conflicting because it is their deck, but at the same time, now their smoke is coming over to our deck and into our house. I'm trying to figure out a way to mitigate this, but haven't come up with the solution yet. We have a high-capacity HEPA air purifier that will run by the back door, but it's not enough to soak up all the smoke as it wafts in. They've been throwing their cigarette butts out onto the lawn. This drives me the most crazy. It's so gross. Like, why do people do this? They're loud and boisterous at all hours. The homeowner in particular is almost always out back on the phone, yelling loudly at whoever he's talking to. It could be 7 a.m. or 1 a.m. I mean, this doesn't bother me too much during the day, but our bedroom faces the back, and when he's out there being loud at night, it literally sounds like he's inside our bedroom with us. Now, for parking, each unit gets a 1-car garage and 1 outside parking space. There are also clusters of visitor parking around the neighborhood. All spots are labeled with a house number or V for visitor. The new neighbor's guests keep parking in private spots and or in front of the garages, blocking people in. It's not a huge inconvenience if I have to park in a visitor spot, but sometimes there aren't any available and I'll have to park all the way down in this grassy area on the other side of the hood and walk back, which sucks if it's hot as heck out or late at night. Apparently, they also did this to our elderly neighbor, and that bothers me because she really can't be walking a quarter mile and more when it's 95 degrees outside. My fiance and I have been talking about it since they moved in and are trying to figure out how best to approach. This issue is further complicated by the fact that they seem to be very new to the US, so they may have just moved here. I'm guessing that a cultural difference is at play here as well. We wouldn't want to offend them or make them feel unwelcome because of their culture, so we haven't spoken to them yet, and we're just trying to gauge if they're just adjusting or learning the ins and outs of community living in our neighborhood, or if all of this is going to be a long-term issue. So the board member lady approached me yesterday to let me know that she's already fed up with them and has started calling them in for violations. She said that she had already tried talking to them directly, but they were rude to her and dismissed her and haven't stopped with the cigarette butts and parking issues. Which is discouraging because we were starting to lean towards speaking directly with them as well, but now I'm wondering if it's even worth it if they don't give a crap. Board member gave me her number and asked me to start sending over pictures of any violations that I notice with them. I said, okay, sure, and was thinking, I probably won't partake in this kind of stuff. But then, again that day, The new neighbors had guests over who parked my fiancée into the garage. I thought about sending the board member a picture like she asked, but ultimately decided against it this time. So now I don't know what to do. Do we try talking directly with them first? And if so, what do we even say? We've admittedly never had to have one of these discussions with a neighbor before. Or do I start sending over the pictures? Or would it be best just to stay out of it completely? SOS, I don't want to be a crazy HOA person, but these neighbors are bothering me. Update. So, right after I posted this, the board member rang the doorbell and I went out and talked to her for a bit. She told me that she called the HOA property manager and asked them to address this issue today because she's fed up. Apparently, they've also not been picking up their dog poop on top of everything else. So I mentioned that my fiance and I are thinking about, just casually having a conversation with them about our concerns. But she said not to, that the HOA told her not to talk to them directly, which is a bit odd in my opinion. I'm not sure if they told her like that because they think that she's going to be a bit overboard, or maybe they just want her to leave them alone, or because they're actually concerned for her safety. They said it was a safety thing. Oh, and I also got more deets about the neighbors. They're not actually the homeowners. The homeowners bought the house and immediately rented it out. So they're tenants and the guests are staying here for the entire summer. Update 2. So this happened tonight. They sped around the corner and drove through the lawn to drop some stuff off at their deck. We had 2 kids over at the time, and if they were outside, they very well might have been run over today. OP also says, I was wondering about this homeowner and tenant HOA dynamic. The board member told me that the homeowners can and will be held responsible for their tenants' behavior. And I guess that, if the tenants keep acting up and their homeowner keeps getting fined, eventually the tenants will be kicked out? But I wonder how long it will take for this whole thing to play out. Weeks? Months? Will they leave willingly or will they need to be evicted? Should be interesting. That's a good idea with a box fan. We have a big box fan that we could put out there and it would probably help direct the smoke the other way. But then I'd feel a little bad because our elderly neighbor lives on the other side of them. The more I think about the parking thing, the more it starts to bother me. I mean, they must not care and have some sense of entitlement because they're repeatedly parking people in. Neighbors in a homeowners association have issues that I don't follow the HOA rules, alternate chaos 5150 post, so the neighbors called me a butt today. I bought a house 5 years ago that a real estate company built on speculation. Mine was the first house in a planned subdivision that they were going to build one house at a time, or as people bought the individual tracts of land. The area kind of hit a boom period, and the other surrounding houses went up quick. In my contract to purchase my home, there was no homeowners association, and because I was here first, I don't have to join any if the other neighbors decide to create. I'm grandfathered in, is what it says in my contract. They all seem to forget this though, and they continually try to give me HOA fines for breaking the rules of the HOA. This has ranged from days that I have things delivered to my home, like Amazon deliveries on Sundays, to when I cut my grass, to me having vehicles parked in my yard and they aren't happy that I own an extra tract of land because I bought 2 to have a bigger yard so that I could build a shooting range. I live in the South, this is not that uncommon. The recent event though that led them to call me a butt is that they came over to ask me to remove the eyesore in front of my garage. Now, my home faces the road, not anyone else's house, so they don't stare at my garage, but apparently they still don't like it. I run a small hobby business of doing woodworking projects, and I have a shelf outside my garage door full of various pieces of treated lumber that I may use one day. It's not the neatest and the cleanest area, but it's not a disheveled mess either. So I told them if they lightened up and just left me alone about all the other stuff, I'd consider moving my woodpile if it bothered them so much. They proceeded to tell me that I needed to address all the HOA issues and take care of the woodpile, along with stopping any deliveries on Sundays and getting my other truck out of my yard. They handed me what basically amounts to a ticket, and I trashed it and I told them to get the heck off my property. They called me a butt for my unreasonable behavior and told me they'd be back. I've been in contact with a real estate attorney about the deed and whether or not they can still attempt to legally force anything. Also, I've contacted one on creating a cease and desist. I do have cameras on my property. The vehicle in the yard is just one, and it's not an abandoned wreck. It's a fairly new truck that I use mostly on weekends. It sits there so I can get my other vehicles out easier. I do move it when I mow, so it's just sitting there beside my driveway. Do you agree with this comment? Not the but. Is there any way to get a sort of restraining order on the HOA? Not the people per se, the entity itself. Or a cease and desist maybe? I don't know, but I'd totally do that if I were me. Yeah, I mean, if you're not in it and you're grandfathered in, that's what your legal contract says. Call the HOA because my yard is devaluing your house? Alright, I'll have it cleaned by the inspection date. Posted by Jumbo Face. This is a story of my mother's. She has always been incredibly hard-headed, but this sticks out a lot from my teenage years. Once a year, she always had us pull everything out of the garage. There's lots of boxes. My mom has a concerning amount of possessions, so we could go through it and clean and reorganize. This particular year, the couple who owned the house across the street from us, Flippers, were in the process of selling their house. Unhappy with my mother's unsightly driveway covered in boxes soiling their good image, they made a call to the HOA. By the time my mother received the letter, the mess had been put away, but they decided to get her on a few other complaints, such as the bikes against the side of the house and the patchy gravel. She had 2 weeks to have everything up to standards. Petty and easily frustrated, my mother knew immediately who called, since the couple had come over and told her flat out with their renovations they were selling that house for way more than any other house in this neighborhood, and would appreciate if she respected that by keeping her property on par. For the next 2 weeks, every box from that garage was in our driveway. The couch and the living room TV came next. This was early summer, so it was perfect weather to sit in your yard in your short shorts and sports bra. My mom made sure to wave and smile every time they brought someone over for a showing. The final step came at the end of that 2 weeks though. After the yard had been cleaned up and cleared by the HOA, my mom went to the local Walmart and bought a for sale sign. She wrote about 1/4 of their ridiculous asking price on it and finished off with a big "sold" written across the front and stuck it out in our yard. No clue what they ended up selling their house for, but it sat empty for a while, so I'd assume it was below offer. Old boss steals owed money through mandatory retirement payments and tells me if I don't like it to take it up with the authorities, so I did. Posted by My Nuts Are Musical. Here we go. A few years back now, I worked for a smallish locally owned company owned by 2 friends. The company was going strong when I started, but after 10 years there, the place was going downhill fast. One day, we discovered the bosses had not been making superannuation payments to us, which my country's required retirement fund that employees and employers are required to pay into, for over 2 years, owing tens of thousands over all the employees. This was the final straw for me, and I gave them 2 weeks' notice. As I was basically the last manager there, most of the employees also quit with me, and this really ticked off the owners who thought that I was somehow overreacting. I made them ensure that they would pay me what I was owed, or I would get the tax agency involved. A few weeks later, I get an email detailing repayments significantly less than what was owed. When I emailed back, they told me that they had taken hours I owed in time in lieu out of what was owed in superannuation, and if I had a problem with that, they would have no issue speaking with the authorities about the hours that I stole from them. This is, of course, highly illegal. For one, we had no contract laying out that I would have to repay owed hours. Secondly, they most definitely cannot take that money from my superannuation repayments. I decided not to reply, save the email, and move straight onto the tax agency, which they look after superannuation affairs. This took a very long time, as the process is very slow, but after about a year and several different tax representatives, I one day got a call out of the blue from one of the owners. This was a very angry, threatening call asking why I had reported them to the tax agency and why I was determined to ruin their lives. I told him exactly why I did it and that he reaped what he sowed. A few days later, I get an email from the tax agency telling me that they will be repaying all that was owed, plus interest accrued over the now 3+ years that they didn't pay. They would have also been put on a blacklist of employers had they not sold the business a few months after we left. For more background, after I quit, I took 2 weeks off to be alone with my thoughts and relax for a bit before accepting one of the many job offers that I received once my departure had been made public in our industry. I walked away with a higher pay, more secure job, and the position every company in the industry was fighting for at the time, as the company I chose won the contract and they gave the position to me. Karen neighbor keeps calling the police and fire department over fire pit smoke nuisance, posted by Athena Doss M. We have lived in our Texas home since 2016 and we own it. It's always been our understanding that recreational outdoor burning is allowed within our city. I checked the city code and there is no HOA, and we have had a fire pit in the same location since shortly after we moved. Our outdoor fire pit sits next to our pool and meets city code requirements, like we have a certificate from the fire department, for instance, and it's located approximately 25 to 30 feet from my next door neighbor's windows. Ever since we moved to our home, we have attempted to maintain a good relationship with all our neighbors and believe that we have gone above and beyond in trying to be friendly with our next door neighbors. Enter Karen, which we used to have over for drinks by the fire, game night, and so on, maybe every other month for about the first 5 years. However, the police and fire department has been dispatched to our home 3 times within the past 5 weeks at the request of Karen. Even my 4 kids had to experience this because of what they are calling a smoke nuisance complaint inside her house. She says the inside of her house has a strong smell of smoke, that she can't sleep because of it, although we know she's a night owl. And she even claimed once that her kid had a cough the next day, but they run an illegal dog adoption agency out of her house, and there are normally 8 to 15 dogs in her house, making me think it could all be just the pet dandruff. Either way, each time the police and fire department came, we were asked to shut it down, and we complied. I tried reasoning with Karen and offered to plant a second tree barrier when we already have pear trees that block her house but go bare in the winter, but she declined. Her only solution is for us to move the pit. After the 3rd time this happened, I went down to the police and fire department to request in writing that they stop taking her work as factual and truly investigate inside her home regarding this smoke nuisance. Lo and behold, the 4th time she called the PD, the police officer dispatched went inside her house, and he stated there wasn't even a faint smell of smoke inside of her house, so he indicated there was no nuisance. To be clear, nothing has changed with the fire pit. What has changed is the fact that we no longer pet sit for them multiple times a year or invite them over for drinks by the fire, same which they used to enjoy and had no smoke nuisance complaint about, due to their constant attempt to control what we do with our fence upgrades, pool upgrades, and exterior paint, and in our house, their needy friendship, and the incessant special request. I have text with proof for all of these. It is our true belief that the main reason they are now complaining of smoke nuisance is the fact that we still invite 1 or 2 other neighboring couples to come to drink by the fire at our house about once or twice a month, and they are not being included. Otherwise, we cannot explain why Karen, during the course of 2016 through 2021, never complained about the smoke until after they stopped being invited. We are not the only neighbors that Karen has called the city on. There is an ongoing history of them not getting along with their neighbors, and it seems like their go-to plan of action mostly consists of placing complaints with the city to make their surrounding neighbors comply with their stupid request, and other neighbors can corroborate. With this said, we find their use of emergency calls to 911, false reporting on our legal fire pit, misuse of city resources, and believe they are using the police and the fire department as a form of harassment against us to scare and annoy us for no valid reason. We Googled the Texas Supreme Court findings on what constitutes a nuisance, and it says, a condition that substantially interferes with the use and enjoyment of land by causing unreasonable discomfort or annoyance to persons of ordinary sensibilities attempting to use and enjoy it. And keep in mind, Karen is claiming that our smoke is a nuisance inside their home, not outside. I know that she will continue calling the PD and fire department on us from here on out, and we would like a second opinion on placing a harassment complaint or how we can make her stop calling the PD and fire department each time we have a fire. An update in the comments, one person suggests if the smoke bothers her and causes her unreasonable discomfort or annoyance, you can't stop her from reporting it. That isn't harassment. OP says, it is when she keeps calling the PD and fire department on us because she is no longer being invited without a real reason. The proof is in the last police officer not being able to smell any smoke inside her house. For it to be a nuisance, doesn't she have to prove it substantially interferes and creates unreasonable discomfort? The police officer had an ordinary sense of smell and could not detect any smoke smell inside her house. Now, this was the first time that they went in to investigate if her claim was factual. I thought it was insufficient for her to claim private nuisance without her proving how it's impacting her. My 25-year-old female boyfriend, 28 male, and I want to avoid our relationship with our begging neighbor, 50-year-old female, who is our HOA president. Posted by Naughty Messy. I, 25-year-old female, live in a condo, which is bought and not rented, building with my boyfriend, who's 28. We've known our neighbor, Elle, who's in her 50s, pretty much since we moved in nearly 2 years ago. Elle lives alone in a very small condo which is located at the entrance of our building. It has a window which overlooks the entryway. She's always been a bit nosy with ours and other neighbors' business. When we first met, Elle was nice enough and seemed very concerned about the building administration and my country's version of an HOA, or whatever the equivalent is for condos. At the time, my boyfriend and I made friends with Elle because we needed her and other neighbors' support to vote out the previous HOA board who weren't managing anything and spent our money without justification. We had a few meetings inside our condo with Elle and other neighbors to organize. Eventually, Elle ended up being selected HOA president via random draw. She is a decent building administrator who has help from another neighbor who was selected as treasurer. Since then, however, Elle's nosy and overbearing tendencies have come to light. She would frequently stop by my boyfriend or I at the building entrance or in her condo and keep us tied up in conversation, mostly her monologue about some health or personal problem of hers, and sometimes for hours. It got to the point where my boyfriend and I were tiptoeing when entering the building in the evening so as to not be waylaid. At one point, starting a few months ago, Elle mentioned during a monologue that she was having health problems and financial issues. Elle began offering homemade cakes and sweets for sale to the neighbors and us to try to raise money. My boyfriend, who felt bad for Elle, kept buying regularly, to the point where we had cake slices several times a week for a few weeks on end. Because Elle has our phone numbers from the group chat for the condo, she would call or message my boyfriend or I several times a day on the days that she brought cake to sell in order to get us to buy from her. If we didn't answer right away, she would come and ring our doorbell several times, very loudly, until she either gave up or my boyfriend and I gave in. This has even happened as late as 10 p.m. I work from home and I finally got so fed up with all the calls and messages that I blocked Elle from messaging or calling me. This progressed until she was no longer able to continue selling cakes and all stopped for a while. Then, a couple of months ago, Elle managed to stop my boyfriend by the building entrance again, tell him a sob story and ask for some money which she would pay back. He gave in to the tune of about $20 in our local currency. I knew at the time this was a bad decision, but I bit my tongue while I waited to see how it would play out. Finally, Elle finished paying my boyfriend and I back earlier this week. However, she's since been coming around again at night to ring the doorbell. Just now, she rang 5 times without answer before finally getting the point and leaving. My boyfriend and I are sick and tired of having our peace interrupted. I'm no longer answering the door or any calls, and neither is he. The problem is that Elle is still our building president for the next year, and so we can't ghost her entirely. I want to find a way to politely tell Elle that boyfriend and I are no longer interested in a friendship outside of the passing hello. What advice do you have for handling Elle and her annoying interruptions? We feel bad for her problems, but we can't handle regular chats or supporting her with handouts anymore. Updates from OP in the comments section. One commenter, Battle of Lisa, says, your boyfriend really needs to put his foot down as hard as you're trying, having a convo, and really be on the same page if she asks for money or conversation or texts or rings again. I know confrontation is scary, but you need to give this woman clear boundaries. I'd also start recording in detail every single interaction, be it a conversation, a doorbell, or an ignored call, down to the time and date. I'd also suggest writing a polite letter and keep a copy for yourself. And OP replies, thanks, I'll try to have a deeper conversation with him about it tomorrow and keeping track of her behavior. I'll talk to him about the letter. Mostly, I just want to create a polite distance with our neighbor, but I understand that she probably thinks we're more friendly than we actually are. I also recognize that she's likely to feel hurt by us backing out of the relationship, which is why this needs to be done gently but firmly. Another commenter asked OP, what rules are in place for being a president? How are the board members voted on, like the length of term? Make it a point to be on a call. Call a friend before entering and make it seem important. When she tries to talk, say, hold on to the call and explain you will talk later as the call is important. And OP replies, the whole president thing is messy. She was chosen by random draw out of a hat because no one volunteered to run. The position lasts 2 years and has been going on for nearly 1. There's no set rules on what powers that she has, but basically, she's our representative when it comes to dealing with things like maintenance issues. She's also in charge of calling meetings of the neighbors to decide on building issues. I make a point never to hang around the entryway and always have an excuse ready. It makes me sad to have to buzz by because I used to be able to stop and chat with the doorman who was friendly. Elle mostly gets under my skin because of her persistence, even when to me it's clear that we're no longer interested in friendly chats or helping her out. It's one thing to knock or call once or twice and then go away, but it's another to ring 5 times and call multiple times in a day over a non-emergency. This commenter suggests that every interruption needs to be, sorry, I don't have time to talk right now. And OP replies, I've been either doing this or ignoring her completely. She doesn't seem to get it and keeps pushing. I forgot to mention that she rang the doorbell about 5 times yesterday evening as well. I got fined by an HOA that I'm not even part of. Posted by PM Georgia O'Keefe. My mother-in-law is the president of her condo owners association. Back in January, she ended up in the hospital for emergency surgery and was in the ICU for a few weeks recovering, and she's fine now. During this period, there was going to be some work done to a few of the units, and the maintenance guy needed the keys from the association. They were all in my mother-in-law's condo. It happened to be on the way home from work, so I said that I would get them the keys. While I'm there, I discover that the tumbler in her doorknob completely comes out of the knob, generally ruining the point of having a lock. I hit the hardware store down the street, get a new lock set, swap it out, and call it a day. On the next hospital visit, I give her the keys and the extra copies that I'd made. Good, great, and grand. The next week, I'm stopping by her condo to get mail and water plants. The maintenance guy sees I'm there and brings back the association keys to put back in mother-in-law's safe. He commented that he tried to do it earlier, but her key didn't work. I explained the situation. He's a nice guy, nods his head, but gave me a heads up that he had told the VP of the board about it and said that I should call him. I do. The guy explains that it is association policy that the association always has a copy of the key for the units in case of emergency and so on. I listen, I explain, and say that mother-in-law, the president, has all the copies, so technically the association does have a copy. Plus, it's an extenuating circumstance. VP is having none of it. I'm there a few days later to do male implants again when the maintenance guy knocks on the door. He's the messenger, but needs to issue me a fine. $75. I thought it was a joke, but he hands over a letter saying that since I changed the lock set, I'm at fault. I took the letter, which asked for my official mailing address and social security number for their records in case of default on payment. It all ended up getting resolved, and because mother-in-law was already in a world of crap following surgery, I didn't make a stink of it. But the frickin' balls on the VP when he got a second of power. Updates and more info from OP. Tiger USF asked in the comments, I'm 99% sure they could never fine you. It'd be her, the owner. Ultra petty though. And OP replies, oh, I'm 100% sure. I threw out the letter. Apparently, they use a PM company that handles all the fines, so not sure where this VP got the idea of doing this. Maybe because I didn't grovel at their feet? Mother-in-law was ticked when she learned of it after getting discharged. Lufa of Doom asked OP, I'd make them famous. Tell the local news station they love this type of crap from the populace. Put the VP's name out there. If he's going to be petty, make him famous and petty. And OP replies, like I said, my mother-in-law is president of the association and just got back from emergency surgery. I didn't want to screw up her world. Crimson 7 asked OP, if she really was ticked, she screwed up his world something special, as she should have. As OP replies, sadly, no, kind old lady. And Six Bubbles says, kind does not equal doormat. Do shady thing, fire my boss, hide millions from your client? I don't think so. Posted by Texan Native 71. Forgive me if this is long, this happened a while ago, but it's still so fresh in my mind. I left college with a business degree in one hand and no job in the other. And like so many colleges, the promises of alumni willing to give jobs to graduates could not have been further from the truth. So I had to seek out my start from the bottom. I found a good job in operations at a company, I can't say who without giving it away. I had a great boss who taught me pretty much everything I needed to know. Work was great and the money was good. I need to explain how the business worked so you can understand how the plan worked. The corporate office was in California and we were not. There are a lot of things that went on at this company and I can't get into all of them because it would just take away from the story, but let's just say they had a very Stratton Oakmont vibe when it came to sales. I started out, worked in operations with some of the smaller clients, but with some help from my boss, I was able to climb the ladder rather quickly to the point of being over all the operations and order processing for the firm. We had a very large client, 90% of the company's business. The way it worked was we had two sets of sales reps, TSRs and CSRs. TSRs were the heavy hitters who reached out to the other big businesses and tech firms to extend their warranties on a product. They made real good money. The CSRs were more of the mom and pop crowd and the inbound sales calls for those that wanted to extend their warranties. The reps were all given codes that associates the client's files with theirs, so if someone did a renewal automatically, they would get paid as if it were their client. Pretty sweet gig. The client hired the firm to be the middleman for their B2B, business to business, as they handled all of their everyday clients. For every $100 that came into our firm, 18%, or $18, would be for the company and the rest would be sent to the clients with the warranties activated. Most of the clients paid by credit card or purchase order with a wire transfer, but there would also be a good amount of checks each week that would need to be processed. A little while after I started, the client check portion was now going to be overseen by one of the sales managers. Didn't really faze me because I was working on the smaller accounts. Since we were a publicly traded company, all the sales reps' orders had to go to operations to be fulfilled. They weren't allowed to process them on their own. This is when things started going downhill. My boss at the time was given temporary access to the financials as they were hiring a new CFO and he had a background with it. We went to lunch like we had done plenty of times before, but he seemed different. When I asked him if something was wrong, he told me that something looked off with our biggest client for one of the accounts. He wanted to make sure before he said anything to the higher-ups. While this was going on, I had been offered the chance to be our new compliance officer, which means I would need to make sure everything was on the up and up. Soon after, I come in to find out that my boss was just terminated for a multitude of reasons, all of which had to be untrue because he was a pretty well-liked guy with not just the company, but with our client as well. As I log into my terminal, I see that before he left, he had given me admin access to his files. Here's where things started to pop off. Remember those checks that the clients were sending in to renew their warranties? Well, we were cashing them all right. Apparently, we just weren't adding those renewals to their products in the system. That would have triggered a payout to our client who, as you remembered, would be getting 82% of that money. Instead, they were cashing the checks, keeping the money, and using the interest in the accounts, yes, in the mid-2000s banks actually paid interest, to cover losses in their collections department. It was wild to see that this was happening, and something had to be done. So, I hatched a plan. First things first, secure a new job because it won't be a fun place to work after this. Done. My previous boss knew of other companies that would scoop me up, put in my notice, and stated in my exit interview that I just couldn't be a part of what was happening, even though HR was in on this. I wanted it on the record. Next, get approval for overtime for all the operations crew to come in on a Saturday and double pay them. They arrive early Saturday, obviously not too thrilled as to why they are there. But when I explain that if they complete the task, not only do they get their overtime, but they get nice bonuses, they were much happier. They spent the entire day applying all of those checks dated back years to the client accounts. We're talking millions of dollars. When all the sales reps arrived Monday, they were shocked as heck. Not only did they meet their weekly goals before picking up the phones, they made their monthly and quarterly goals too. 2 weeks into the new quarter. Cheers, partying, yelling, screaming, celebrating. Except sales management. They went from being really excited to skeptical, to confused, to oh crap in about 2 hours. They realized where it must have come from. Because not only did the company hit all these sales, since it had been paid over a day, the client came into work Monday to see a very nice payday in their system as well. And, like anyone, would have questions, and says they are coming out to congratulate the team on such great numbers. So management starts scrambling because they can't figure out how this happened, and all under my boss's old login? On my last day, I arrive, and in the lobby, I've got my box for the last of my things and so on. Guy walks up as he's waiting for the elevator with me, and we strike up conversation. He notices my box and jokes about getting fired, and I just tell him I had a great opportunity come up, so I decided to leave before crap hits the fan. We laughed. Really nice down-to-earth guy. He realizes we are getting off on the same floor. He asks if I work for X, and I say yes. He asks where, and I tell him operations, and he reveals that he is the CEO of our client. Ooh, we go our separate ways. Client shows up and there's a big party. Afterwards, the client says that they would love to get a breakdown of where most of the sales came from so they can allocate more money to that department. Management says, sure, but it made up a lie about how they can't share client payment info due to regulations, blah, 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 blah. Cue my exit from the company. 2 weeks go by and I get a phone call from a number I don't recognize, so I let it go to voicemail. When I get off work, I checked it to find out it was the CEO of the client where I used to work. He, quote, has had something come up, end quote, and would like to talk to me. Of course, I'm nervous as heck, but I call him back and he picks up the phone on the first ring, and we get to chatting for a bit, and he finally just asked me, why did you leave? I tell him I had a great opportunity come up. He doesn't buy it, and he says that apparently my comment about crap hitting the fan really stuck with him, and he thinks something more is going on. So, after a little more prodding from him, I just tell him, just look at collections, and that's all I can say. He thanks me, and I hang up. 2 days later, he pulled the plug on the account. Apparently, my old company tried to threaten him with a lawsuit for pulling the account 3 years early. He replied with, that's fine, because I'll show the courts that I have evidence that you committed fraud. Corporate came in and cleaned house. All of management was fired within the day. 1 month later, my friends and I had a very memorable trip in Vegas, all courtesy of our old client. The epilogue. The best part. I guess this should have been part of the story. My old boss was an adopted kid and treated his adopted parents great. while their real kids didn't. And when they passed, they left him all their money. All of it. This was about 2008. He was in a weird place because he loved his parents and was really close to them. He went to church to pray for his parents and for what to do with this new landfall of money. He loved working, but didn't need to anymore. He left the church and went to a bar, because who doesn't? And he sits next to a guy who, and this is almost out of a movie, is a developer and has run out of money to finish his development because it's 2008, and no one is loaning money. They get to talking and he thinks, maybe this is a sign. I'll speed this up because I've got to run to work, but he invests in the guy's development by buying all the houses, dirt cheap at the time, and now lives off the residual income from all of them being rentals. Life sucks because so many people do crappy things and get away with it. That it's great when good things happen to good people. Storage container for remodel. Okay, I'll try to keep this short. So I live in an HOA in Washington State. I bought the house when I was 19 and had no idea how horrible the HOA could be. If I knew what I was getting into, I would have never bought the place. So I decided to remodel my place. I work full time and remodel after work and weekends when I'm not working. I got my permit for 3 months, and then after, it's on a month-to-month basis. In the rules and regulations, it does not state how long you're allowed to have the storage container. As long as the remodel or construction is happening, then it's fine. Well, I went in to renew the permit and I was told they weren't going to extend it any longer because it was taking too long. There's been other members that have had a storage container for 3 years before getting it removed. I'm at 8 months. So I got a warning letter for the container. I called the office and told them that I got a hold of the storage company so that they can remove it. Well, the compliance officer shows up at my house a week later and asks what's the status of the container, that he called the storage company and got information that I never called or emailed them. That's when I get irate, cuss them out and tell them to get screwed off of my property. How are they allowed to call a private company that I signed a rental agreement with to get information of my account status? Seems like there has to be some kind of privacy laws. I call the storage company and inquire what's going on. They forward an email to me that the compliance officer sent, and it states that the storage container is on HOA property, not mine, and my lease is up. Completely false. Lied to the storage company to obtain information. There's like 2,000 homes in the HOA, and not only are dues going up like $200 a year, but they just hit everyone with a special assessment of $3,100 like a year ago, over $6 million to fix docks at the marina where there's limited ships and maybe 5% of people actually own a boat. They stated that the money for the marina maintenance was used elsewhere, so now they need to have money to fix it. They knew about the marina not having money for 8 years and did nothing to correct it. And they hit everyone with a special assessment. 90% of people were ticked off about it because they knew nothing about it and did nothing. Plus, it was right after COVID. People weren't working and the cost of everything skyrocketed. I don't know if I need to speak to a lawyer about the storage container issue. If you don't feel comfortable pursuing it, you need to have someone that knows the ins and outs of this particular set of laws, so that is what you should do. What do you think? Click my next crazy HOA Karen compilation on your screen to continue your listening session. Thanks for checking this one out, and see you in the next one.